If you're a small business owner and you're using QuickBooks Online to do your own bookkeeping, this is a really good step-by-step process with a bunch of tips and tricks on how to categorize your transactions properly. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time in QuickBooks, and so this is a really crucial step in the process, and understanding how it all works is going to help a lot. Make sure you're not making mistakes and stuff. So the first point that I have, and the first step to all this, is actually outside of QuickBooks Online, but you're a small business owner who's trying to do your own books. You need to understand income accounts, expense accounts, assets, liabilities, and equity. So accounting 101 stuff, you need to understand how a profit and loss and a balance sheet works. Spend some time on YouTube, read a book, like get that information and understand it. It's the basics of it, but that'll go a long way, because there's times where you need to categorize a transaction that is not an expense in a certain way, and you have to have an idea of how to do that. So that's going to go a long way. As far as going into QuickBooks, I'm going to assume that you are at this page, the bank transactions. So you've connected your bank accounts, your credit cards, and you have a bunch of transactions that need to be categorized. So make sure that looks like that. And I would start by only dealing with money out items, right? Only items that are money leaving the bank account in this way. I'll start with a checking account. And then you want to sort by description. So it'll default to the dates, right? Like chronologically. You want to sort it by description. This means that usually all the same types of transactions will be grouped together, and you can then usually make rules and make some efficiencies and automations that'll make it all easier. But you also, in a mindset, I'm categorizing an ADP tax item here, right? And then I'm going to do that for all of them. And then, I'm switching to wages now. I'll categorize that. You get the idea. It'll just be a lot easier. So as far as actually, categorizing your transaction, there's two main things I will talk about right now, which is the vendor name. Generally speaking, you want to assign a vendor name. There's various reasons for this, but most of all, like later down the line, reporting will be a lot easier. And also, if you need to send out a 1099, that will make the whole process a lot easier. Those are different videos, but overall, you want to assign a vendor name. It's a better safe than sorry type idea. Then you will assign the account. Generally, if it's money out, it's an expense account, but there are exceptions, which I'll go over in a second. You want to assign, take your best guess at what this is. In this case, this is ADP tax. I know that this is payroll tax, basically. And so there's a better way to book payroll taxes. That is a different video on how to properly do that. But for the sake of this video, I will put in a payroll taxes expense. If you're adding an account for the first time, this is what the window looks like. You name it. You put the account type. This is why the equity, asset, liability, all that kind of stuff is important to understand. In this case, it's an expense. The detail type is actually not that important. I've never really needed to use this for anything, but might as well put it to something that makes sense. And if you don't know what it is, other business expenses. But this is payroll tax expense. I've never even really used the detail type. I've been doing this for 13 years. So that's up to you. Then I'll save it. And now when I go to these transactions, I will add it as payroll taxes, just like this, right? Over time, you'll see that QuickBooks will try to make things efficient and then make guesses on certain things. I think while you are learning how to do this, try to avoid the automations for the time being. And then only once you're understanding how the whole process works, that's when you can start making things more efficient. That's my belief. But anyway, this is the same transaction, right? Or same type of transaction. So payroll taxes. I'm going to add that in. There you go. And I'm just going to do that again and again. Maybe I copy paste the word payroll taxes and select it and all that. All right. So there's a few different types of transactions that you need to be aware of, because if you don't categorize these properly, they will mess everything up. So first off is transfers. So there's plenty of times where you are money is coming out of your bank account and going to a different account, maybe to your personal account, maybe to a savings account, a business savings account, or maybe to a credit card. Those all need to be booked in a certain way, and they're not expenses. So the way you would do that is identifying that this is in this case, probably $2,000. I'm probably transferring money from this checking account out to a savings account, right? So you would just select that account, just like if it was an expense account, you would select that account like this. That's the correct way of booking it. Now you could record it as a transfer, but functionally they do the exact same thing. So maybe just to make it easy, I would categorize. The transfer feature is kind of a little weird. It's limiting on what you can do. So generally I would just do a categorize and just assign it to that savings account. So I'll do savings. The other one is credit card payments. Now, if you think about it logically, that's the same thing as a transfer, right? You are transferring money from a checking account, in this case, to a credit card. It's just going to the credit card and it pays down the credit card, but it really is the same kind of idea. So we'll say that this one right here is the same kind of idea. You can just select the credit card, right? QuickBooks has recently come out with this credit card payment feature. If you want to use that, that makes it a little bit clearer that this is a credit card payment. You don't have to do that. Functionally, it does the same thing, but ultimately you can just categorize it. So that's how you would do that. So the next one is uncategorized asset. It's unbelievable to me that QuickBooks has not fixed this problem, but there are times where it for some reason will try to have a transfer go to uncategorized asset. This is never correct, and you want to be looking out for it. And what you will see, I don't have an example here, but what you will see is a transaction like this, where it'll assign the account as uncategorized asset. I don't know what an uncategorized asset is. It's not helpful. It doesn't make any sense. And I've had to fix this problem so many times over the last decade. This is always incorrect, and you want to make sure you assign this to the proper place and do it now, right? So just be on the lookout for that. Lastly is owner's draw. So, there's obviously times where you are taking money out of the business. That's not in payroll, that's a different thing. But if you're just taking money out of the business to pay yourself, that's an owner's draw. And also, if you happen to pay for something on your business card that is actually not business, but is very clearly a personal expense, that's functionally the same thing as you just taking money out of the business. That has to be assigned to owner's draw. If you don't have an owner's draw account, you want to make sure you add it in. So I will just add it in like this, owner's draw. And you want to change the account type to equity. And then you just have it as an owner's equity type account. And you would just save that as is. I already have it in here though. So if it is money that is for personal reasons or just you transferring money out, that's an owner's draw. So make sure you categorize it as such. It is not an expense. And it changes your profit and loss and everything. So it's really important. All right, so matching and rules. So this is all like about efficiency and automation. Again, I'm just telling you about this because it's important to know, but I would get familiar with how this works before you really implement any of this stuff. But you will see over time that QuickBooks may try to match a transaction. And what that means is that it's seeing a transaction that is in QuickBooks already. So you've categorized it somewhere or you've added it in, ahead of time, and it's saying, hey, look, that looks like the same transaction. Let me just match this, and I'm not going to create another transaction, right? So I would say overall, you want to use the matching feature, but if you're going to do it, you don't want to just blindly say match and done, because there are plenty of times where QuickBooks will assume something that's not correct, or it might even match the incorrect transaction. So like the date is off or whatever. You'll get familiar with it as you use the feature, but just be careful with matching. Just know what you're doing. It is a good feature because you don't want to add in a transaction that's already in there. That will obviously create a duplicate, two transactions that are the same, and that'll cause a whole mess of problems. So you do want to use it, just be careful. As far as rules go, you can always look at all your rules here in the rules tab, and you can add ones that you want. but I would use the rules tab or rules button on the transactions, because that's the easiest way to add it, frankly. What you're doing with a rule is basically saying, if this is true about a transaction, then categorize it as such. So it really speeds up the process, as you could probably tell. So for this is clearly ADP wage payments. Very clear what that is. So there's no way it can be anything else. So I'm going to say ADP wages. Do you want to name it something that's pretty obvious? And it's saying that if this transaction is money out and it's in all of the bank accounts, and it includes the description that says ADP wage, you can change all these around to bank text, or if it's just a specific amount, and it contains the word, ADP wage in the bank description, then I want to assign it as an expense. It's going to come out of this account or this expense account. So payroll. I guess I don't have payroll wages, but you get the idea. Payroll taxes. And then have the payee be ADP and replace the bank memo. Now I suggest actually to keep the existing bank memo. I don't even know if I would append anything to it. Just keep the existing bank memo. Then you can also select if you want to auto add the transaction. If you really know what you're doing and you're sure that you know what you're doing here, then auto add it, and then quite literally it will not even ask you about this transaction anymore, which will speed up the process severely. So I'm going to go ahead and have the category be correct and put save. Now this is interesting because for some reason it has assigned this as a credit card payment, which is incorrect. This is why it's important that you look around your categorizations and ensure things are correct. QuickBooks does not always get it right. So it's interesting that this happened as I was making this video. It very clearly says it's an expense. So I don't know why it's saying that. So I'm now going to go to Categorize, Wages, Add. I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that. It's super weird. Very annoying, but make sure you do that. What a weird glitch. Maybe if I refresh it and get back to it. Anyway, I'm not going to bother with all that right now. So you can set up the rules. You can then manage the rules. Maybe something got broken or is not needed, and you can all edit it there. All right, so step 3. Now we're going to talk about money in, right? We've dealt with all the expenses or the money out items. Let's talk about your income and just a couple of things on that. What you want to do is limit the amount of types that you have, right? The more types of income you have, the more details you have on all that, the more of a pain that this is all going to be, and less likely is that you're going to literally do this. So honestly, like if you can minimize it to like 2 different types of income or even 1, that would be ideal. You certainly want to make sure there's a separation between services income and product income. You're probably familiar with this, but if you're selling products, you most likely have to do sales tax, and you have to report that differently, and that's really important. So minimally, if you're doing services and products, you have those 2 separations. I would try to keep it under 4, definitely. 4 is probably too much. So it's the same kind of idea, actually, with this. You are categorizing it, and you're just putting the income or product income or services income. This is for a different video, but then there's customers that you can add depending on if your QuickBooks is set up properly. And so you would want to assign a customer if you're doing that. If you're using invoices, that changes how this is all done. So that's a different video. The 2 types of transactions that are important, I think, in this case, just like in the money out section, is owner's investments and then refunds and credits. So if you ever need to put money into the business, that is not income. You need to label it as owner's investment. You are investing money into the business. It's like the opposite of owner's draw. So put it in owner's investment. That's an equity account. So same idea, you would create it, put the account type as equity, and there you go. So the other one would be any sort of refund or credit, right? The general rule of thumb on that is something like this. This is an ADP tax credit. It would look like I got money back for taxes. You would want to assign it to the expense account associated with this vendor. So In this case, it was very clearly for taxes, and I'm going to go payroll taxes. So you're lowering, what this functionally doing is lowering your expense for the amount of expense for payroll taxes. Refunds and credits are the same in that regard. So just think about that. All right. Last thing about this is the categorized and excluded tabs. This is important because what you need to understand is that when you put transactions in here, right, in the bank transactions window like this, they're not actually added into QuickBooks yet. Only when you click the word add on the right here are you actually putting them in your books. So this is kind of like a holding cell area where they're kind of just sitting here waiting to be added to the books. So the way to check if something's been added is, I guess, to go look at your like reports or whatever, but you can also look at categorized. And this is where you can undo transactions and like basically take them out of the books and then maybe categorize them a different way if you need to, or exclude them, which is the next part. There's also transactions that you are like, it's already in there, I don't want to match it, I'm going to exclude it. Be very careful with excluding things because in the future you'll learn about reconciliations. But if you don't know what you're doing, you will mess up a reconciliation, and if something's happening on that regard, check the categorized and excluded. Maybe that's where it is. So those are two important areas to look at when you're categorizing, or more of like fixing problems, I guess, when that happens, because it will. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. Really quick framework for going through your categorizations, knowing what you're doing, some tips and tricks. And so if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. And yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about all this. I would love to help you out. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.